All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Hurricane Warning Show. I'm Jim Williams, and it's currently 11 o'clock, and we're going to kick it off tonight here with Hurricane Emily making landfall in the Yucatan Peninsula. Well, before we get started, let me go ahead and switch images here and show you our current position of Hurricane Emily. There it is, just southeast by about 50 miles of the island of Cozumel, Mexico. This is the island that is going to take a direct hit tonight from this powerful Category 4 hurricane. That's right, it's still a Category 4 hurricane as of 11 p.m. Now, this is a close-up courtesy of the HurTrack program, and that red circle you see on your screen is the central dense overcast. That's the area of highest intense winds around the eye of this hurricane, and they're encroaching on Cozumel right now. And let's go ahead and pull up the latest radar image here, and this is courtesy of FloridaHurricane.com, and Michael Cornelius sent me this link to set this up so that this will refresh automatically, and you'll get the latest images as the hurricane closes in on Cozumel. And in fact, let me move this over here so you can kind of see the path that this has taken so far. This is a zoomed-in radar image of our hurricane approaching Cozumel. And I don't know if we've gotten any recent images here. This might have been about from 30 to 40 minutes or so ago. Enhanced satellite image of Cozumel. Now let's go ahead and let me just get a different image up here for you to look at. First of all, before we get to this, here's your recon fixes. Let me back this off a little bit or scroll down so you can see what I'm talking about here. Here is Cozumel, and those last three dots on your screen there are the recon fixes from the hurricane hunters. And you can clearly see here that this is moving west-northwest. There's no northwest movement here. This isn't jogging north. Again, you can see it would be heading in. Do we have a caller on the line?
Yeah, well, my name is Robert. I've spent just very recently 3 years in Playa del Carmen, Mexico.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
All the coast, all along that region, extremely well.
What's your view of the area that's being affected tonight and the people? Kind of give us an idea of what the geography is like there, and do you think that they're prepared for this?
Well, it's a very, very laid-back people. They're very laid back there. I was there when we were just barely threatened and brushed by a hurricane, and we didn't even know anything until about maybe 24 hours or so before we were supposed to be affected. I think the Mexican government has improved a lot. I have friends actually staying with me here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, from Playa del Carmen, and my other friends went to Cancun and they went to Merida. The region is about the worst place you could possibly want a hurricane. The main street called Fifth Avenue, that's the English version of it, where all the shops and the main hotels are in Playa del Carmen, are probably 2 to 3 blocks from the ocean. It's been built up. At one point, it was the fastest growing town in the world. I think that was like 2 or 3 years ago. That was in the Guinness Book of World Records. It's the worst possible place you would want a hurricane, even a minor hurricane, to come ashore.
You think there's going to be people that are going to die there tonight because of lack of preparation or evacuations?
Well, I was encouraged by the fact that my friends that are here with me now, well, actually they're out celebrating that they're not there now, but also, it's tough to say. I was encouraged that there were many buses in Playa del Carmen and surrounding areas that were taking people to Cancun, to ballrooms and so forth, in the big hotels, and anybody who wanted to jump on those buses could, and they could go to Cancun or Merida. But, how many people got on those buses? I don't know. I know the buses were full, but there's so many people down there. The homes just, I would say, maybe 5 or 6, 7 blocks from the ocean where it gets what they call real Mexico. They have pretty much just, small houses, if you even want to call it houses, where it's just plywood
All right, Robert. Well, thanks for the update from you and your opinion on the area being hit tonight. And if anything else comes to mind, either drop me an email or call up. And or if you hear something from down there, absolutely, give me a call.
They've lost electricity down there, a while back. So there's no webcams down there anymore. There's no emails. There's no nothing from friends. I heard the last couple of days from them, but like I said, they've gone elsewhere. And I know there's a local webcam that I know to go to in Playa del Carmen. That's been shut down. There's no power. There's no nothing. So I think hopefully everybody has left and everybody got on those buses. But I think it's fair to say that we need their prayers right now.
All right, Robert. Thank you very much for the call, and let's just hope for the best.
Okay, thank you.
All right, good night. All right, that's Robert. He's in Fort Lauderdale, but he's spent a lot of time down there, as you heard, and that's the kind of calls we enjoy, or people that are actually familiar with the area and can kind of give a rundown of what's happening down there. But that's a zoomed-in satellite image right there of Playa del Carmen, and you can see it's kind of a built-up town there, right near the coast. But it's not right on the ocean. It's backed off a little bit from the. Okay, we have a call in Virginia. Go ahead, caller.
Good evening, Jim. It's Craig.
Oh, hello, Craig.
Hey, I was actually just down there in Cozumel a couple months ago, and we were on vacation enjoying it, and never really thought what the place would look like after a storm like this. But my gosh, these people are in for a horrible night.
Yeah, and it looks like it's going to pass just south of Cozumel, but the northern eye wall is going to pass over all of Cozumel and into Playa del Carmen. I don't think it's going to get up as far as Cancun, although that's still possible.
Yeah, the Cozumel, I don't know a lot about Cancun, but what I do remember about Cozumel is that you'd have one section that had a lot of newer places, construction with these resorts and stuff, and then just a block away you'd have homes that were, very old and very weakly constructed. I also remember I don't remember the elevation being that high, and I can't imagine the damage that they're going to take there. We did I think it was a swim with the dolphins thing there, and that whole coast area as we drove on up, it was full of a bunch of smaller homes. Those poor people are just going to get absolutely hammered tonight.
This is the place where the people are being kept, apparently, some of the tourists and stuff. They've been lucky enough to be housed in a shabby, rundown Mexican school, and this is the picture of it. I suppose our hosts are doing their best, but the classrooms we are in have wooden louvers. I'd rather have stayed in a hotel. If you have any questions I can answer for you, ask away, and provide me with directions for posting some updates. I will keep them coming as long as we have GPRS here. The other image is where they're sleeping. Let me show you this. This is where they're evacuating people to, folks. This is not a good situation. I mean, those buildings don't look too solid to me. Notice the louver windows that she was describing, and people laying on the floors in there. And this is in a flood zone, probably. So they're going to be dealing with water coming into some of these places. And I just hope that, I don't know.
Last message that they got from the man in Cancun, which his name is Alberto, that this is much worse than Gilbert as far as Cozumel is concerned. I know Gilbert took a different track, but I guess in the last 30 minutes or so, the winds have picked up dramatically in Cozumel, which I don't think is any surprise given what we're seeing on radar. But they're very scared. The email I just got from my friend that's in Cancun, safe and sound, he's very worried. They feel that given the current track of the storm and what's being said from Cozumel, that Cozumel is in deep trouble and Playa del Carmen are in deep trouble. It seems like we'll actually have two ground zeros. Will be Cozumel and Playa del Carmen will be the ground zero with this hurricane. Passed a law not to build any building over 3 stories high. The reason was they didn't want it to turn into another Cancun. So when you're looking at a Category 4 storm coming in to Playa del Carmen, you have to realize there is no structure in that town over 3 stories high, except for that one lighthouse that you can see on certain pictures of Playa del Carmen. Other than that, there's nothing built over 3 stories. And that is worrisome as far as the storm surge. The storm surge is going to be huge in Cozumel and Playa del Carmen, because there's not, you can't climb higher than 3 stories anywhere in that area. And if you go just south of Playa del Carmen to towns like Acamal and Pamul, there's nothing over 1 floor. Okay, there's nothing over 1 floor. Looking at what you're showing now, Jim, and I think Playa del Carmen will unfortunately for me, because I have it's the most beautiful place on earth as far as I'm concerned. It's where all by the way, I think it's important to note too for people that have never been there. It's where they film all the Corona ads that you see on television and on the trucks that you see go by, and the newspaper articles and magazines. This is Playa del Carmen, is where they film. There in that vicinity is where they film all the Corona ads that you see. So it is truly paradise.
Robert, what is the name of that waterway between Cozumel and Playa del Carmen?
What is it called?
Yeah.
Well, it's a 30-minute ferry ride from Playa del Carmen to Cozumel. I mean, when you're sitting on the beach at Playa del Carmen, you can see right offshore the island of Cozumel. But now, again, I don't know how much Cozumel is going to save Playa del Carmen. Like I said, but the worst part here to me seems, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that it looks as of now that the worst part of the storm, the dirty side of the storm, would be Cozumel and Playa del Carmen, just to the northeast quadrant of the storm.
Hurricanes, we have the major networks that do 24/7 coverage. What do you think the people could have expected there today with that hurricane bearing down? Do they have television networks that would broadcast to these people and do full coverage?
Yeah, they have a lot more than they did. You have to understand, again, it's very important to note, this was, as of a couple of years ago, the fastest growing town on the planet. So when I first went down, there were just kind of wires around, and electricity would go out several times during the day, but there was progression made. And we had internet, and then we had cable television. So Playa del Carmen is a place that really was progressing rapidly. If this happened even just 5, 6, 7 years ago, it would have been a lot worse. The word never would have gotten out in time.
Good thing about all this, Robert, is that we have a low tide here at 12:45 a.m. here. And the next high tide is at 6:45 in the morning, and the worst of it should already be through by then.
Well, again, I don't mean to be doomsday, but again, I've been this, for so long. People talk about high tide and all that. There's not a big high and low tide down there. There's not a big difference. If you lived in like the North, New England or whatever, you see the big tides. And down there, the tide is not a real big factor. You never see a big difference between low and high tide down there. Got the image now, Jim. Yeah, that's one of the beaches. Way in the background there, you can see the El Fardo lighthouse. It's a hotel, but it's more or less a lighthouse. Way back in the background, that's the center of town where that lighthouse is located. Where this picture taken, that's close to the ferry dock that goes to Cozumel. Which is a 30-minute ferry ride, so it's very close. You can see Cozumel right from the shore. You can see how everything's built along there, and actually now it's even built more than that. There's a lot more structures. Now, the reason that they don't have the big places is because they didn't want it to turn into a Cancun. They wanted to keep everything on 3 stories. So that can, that's nice, but in a situation like this, it'd be nice to get a little bit higher ground. Because the last 3 or 4 years, it's just developed, and the word has gotten out. And once you go to Playa del Carmen, you'll never go to Cancun. Not to put down Cancun, but everybody that's ever gone down there knows that. once you go to Playa del Carmen, you'll never go back to Cancun.
All right, Robert, we're going to go ahead and try to get some more information here. We got some other information coming in on email, and we're going to go ahead and start reading some stuff that's been coming in here. We appreciate all the information you've been providing.
No problem, Jim. I'm a little sad tonight. A beautiful place is, most likely going to get destroyed, but you're doing a hell of a job.
All right. Well, I'm hoping to get some more information here. I'm going to start reading some stuff out. So thanks a lot, Robert. Keep listening, and thoughts or prayers down to the people down there.
Thank you so much, Jim.
All right. Okay, we just got a report from new report in from Storm Carib. We have a guy named Jim Ewing. He's in Cozumel via candlelight. Of course, this was about an hour ago that this came in. The winds were blowing at 50 to 60 miles per hour. There's already 2 trees down. Gusts were about every 10 seconds. Lost 1 water tank from the roof. Curfew was at 12 p.m. yesterday. All beer sales stopped. Even the restaurants the last 2 days rode around the island, closed gas lines for 3 days. The ferry stopped at 3 p.m. this afternoon, yesterday. The airport closed this morning. Life is great. Me from Miami, seen it about 15 times. My wife is from Canada. She is having a great first time. Let's see, the electric is out at about 9:14 a.m., I guess. 9:14 p.m. the power went out tonight. Everybody is boarded up. They lowered the pool water and everything brought it. I hope they didn't lower it too much because it'll pop out of the ground. When they were out, they got 15 large bags of ice, and they all split it up between all the people that were together. We stay close together here, very close when something like this comes around. It's raining like crazy.
My compatriots at the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron flying the storm. The center of circulation now just off to the southeast of the southern tip of Cozumel. Top wind still at 135 miles an hour. Central pressure has been rising, still at 955 millibars, the last report from the Hurricane Hunter aircraft. Here's a close-up look at it, and you can see that center circulation getting very close to Cozumel, and likely the hurricane-force winds now pushing across the island and on toward the mainland. And then as we progress through time, we do expect it to head farther to the east, or farther to the west, rather, and eventually make a second landfall here along the northeastern Mexican coast or perhaps deep south Texas.
And meteorologist Mike Bennett has been tracking Hurricane Emily from Cancun, where this weekend many tourists did evacuate.
Now, Cancun is known for its white sandy beaches. Erosion from Hurricane Emily will be a big concern for the resort city.
Mike Bennett has more now on how Cancun and the Mexican resort cities have prepared for Hurricane Emily.
Hurricane Emily, a record-setting hurricane, the strongest Atlantic Basin hurricane to ever form in the month of July, now wreaking havoc on the Mexican coast and making landfall. This storm, it really has been a long time in coming. Last time we had a major landfalling hurricane a decade ago here in the Yucatan, but how about the history of our storms here in the Yucatan and our impacts within 75 miles of Cancun? Let's talk about them. Certainly last year, 2004, a record-setting year. Even just a glancing blow to this area. It was a Category 5 when it came racing by the Yucatan, some minor damage, but nothing like what happened in the panhandle of Florida. And then Roxanne, 1995, that was the last direct impact from a storm and a hit. That was a Category 3 storm with 115 mile-per-hour winds, but the big storm was 1988. And Hurricane Gilbert, a Category 5 storm, the strongest Atlantic Basin hurricane on record, with a pressure of 888 millibars in 1967 and 1951 with Hurricanes Beulah and Charlie. Charlie came ashore as a Category 3. A lot of evacuations in the Cancun area. 30,000 people have been evacuated, all safely in shelters. Emergency managers working quite efficiently to get those tourists to safety as Emily rolls on shore. We'll assess the damage in the morning and have more live reports at that time. Reporting from Cancun, Mexico, I'm meteorologist Mike Bettis.
And as Mike mentioned, he will be back on the air at 6 a.m. Hopefully he does get a bit of sleep. Here's Emily's journey. It formed east of the Lesser Antilles here and then tracked and was already a hurricane when it smashed through the island of Grenada here in the Windward Islands and then grew into a major hurricane. You can see the eye starting to pop out, and at one point, the strongest hurricane on record in the Atlantic Basin for the month of July. It has weakened somewhat, but now making landfall here in the Yucatan Peninsula. And unfortunately, landfall is imminent. The strongest winds and highest surge near the center, a fairly compact center. Impacts, though, will spread inland across the...
Okay, that was the latest from the Weather Channel. Again, we're monitoring the networks here tonight, and I did get a couple of emails about the storm chasers tonight and where are they. There is a storm chaser named Jim Eds who works with Weathervine, and he's a friend of Jim Leonard's. He is in the affected areas tonight, but he does not do any live streaming like we do with Mark Sideth and the SunCam TV guys. There's no live video that's going to be coming out of there tonight because the communications are horrible down there for cell connections, and I think we're not going to get much information out of that area. He's just going to be down there filming the storm, and then when it's all over, he'll probably be able to get some images up to the internet.
Hello, Jim. This is Jeff. How you doing this evening?
Jeff Petrowski, Storm Chaser. Good evening, Jeff. What's your take on all this?
Boy, it's serious. I mean, obviously, it's a major hurricane. I've got some information here, which is not going to be a surprise to anybody of what's going on down in Cozumel in that area. One of the things I was been watching all afternoon this evening is the wave heights off one of the buoys that was off to the north and east of the buoy 42056. Did have wave heights about 32 feet this afternoon. Now it's back down to 21, but we're showing like the 16 to 26-foot wave heights. That's from the bottom of the crest to the top of the crest, but still a very major waves. From Cozumel all the way up to Cancun, I've got the highest waves approaching Cancun now, probably in the order of 16 to 20-foot waves approaching that area now, all the way down to Cozumel. So Cozumel northeastward, up north of the coast, is going to get battered by huge waves. Based on the current satellite data and what's going on in the satellite right now, what I see happen with the waves.
Yeah, Mike Bettis from the Weather Channel was just on the screen here, and it was blowing pretty good behind him. I suppose he was in a protected area while he was standing up, but you could see the wind blowing pretty good behind him, and of course they're probably 70 miles north of where the center is coming in right now, but still pretty good winds up there, so I can only imagine what's going on at Cozumel right now and Playa del Carmen.
Just north of Cozumel ought to be really substantial damage and substantial wave battering as this thing continues to track northwestward. It's going to be interesting to see how this thing, where it makes landfall and second landfall as we get into Tuesday afternoon and night, somewhere, maybe 100 to 150 miles south of Brownsville is kind of where the area looks like it's going to make landfall, maybe.
Jeff, do you know of any storm chasers down in Cozumel tonight, or down in that area tonight?
Yeah, I heard Jim Eads was down there. I was told that Leonard was getting ready to get on a plane yesterday at about 11 or noon. That's what was on Storm Track. I have not heard an update since then, but I'm under the belief that Jim is there.
Oh, you are? Okay, well, that's interesting. Well, he hasn't returned my emails, but he's probably very busy, might not have even checked.
Yep. So it's just hope for the best for those people down there. It's a very major hurricane, and hopefully it's weakened enough that it won't do quite as bad as everybody's thinking. But it's a major hurricane, to say the least.
Yeah, and it's in the middle of the night. They can't see anything. All you do is hear this howling sound that's really indescribable. It's just a constant roar, and that's what these people are going to be going through all night tonight as this thing passes in there, and I just hope they got them far enough inland away from the surge areas, because like that caller Robert was saying, that water's just going to be all over the place.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. That's one of the main reasons why I didn't go down there, is that it was going to be a nightfall, landfalling hurricane. It was just extremely difficult. As I've already heard, that the electric went out quite early, late this afternoon, so the chances of having any light is going to be very minimal at all for shooting. So it's going to be very difficult to shoot anything almost midnight, when the thing makes landfall here. So that's a problem.
Yeah, it's almost like it's not worth the trip if it's all going to be in the dark, But they're there to cover the aftermath, I guess. They can get some aftermath footage.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, let's watch and see what happens as this thing continues to track to the northeast, and hopefully it'll stay south of Brownsville, far enough that won't affect the U.S. mainland. But time will tell. The models keep flipping back and forth, and I noticed the GFS is back south again on tonight's run, and this morning or today, this morning's run had it just south into Mexico and Brownsville area, and then it's back south again tonight on tonight's run, so maybe it'll stay south.
All right, Jeff. Thanks for calling in, and if you hear anything, drop me an email or give another call.
Thanks, Jeff. Bye-bye.
All right. That's Jeff Petrowski, well-known storm chaser, giving an update on what the situation is down there. Let me finish this email here. I had this email come in. It looks like the satellite imagery, like we're in contact with the outer band. Of course, this was from an hour ago. The winds are intensifying rapidly, and it is forecast that we should have the strongest winds between 11 and 1 a.m. Of course, that's happening right now. Just heard over the radio that they will be evacuating Puerto Juarez port, where most ferries to Almaraz, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, depart from. With the aid of the armed forces and civil protection due to the storm surge they've been experiencing. They've also been broadcasting an alert to those who have decided to stay in their houses or hotels which have not been deemed to be shelters, to get out and move to a more adequate shelter. It seems that some have decided to stay after the repeated warnings and suggestions to evacuate the area. Don't know how much longer we will be having our phone lines, internet, or power. I'll post updates as long as I can. Our thoughts go out to the less fortunate in the area and hope that the damage will be kept to a minimum. Unfortunately, don't believe that we won't experience no destruction at all. And this is regards from Kareem, who is down in Cancun. Thank you very much for that email. This is one of my high-risk areas for this hurricane season, and it just missed, as you can see. The system is passing up in this area here, and Punta Allen is going to escape the worst of it, it looks like, but that was one of my high-risk areas. Cancun and Cozumel were not one of my high-risk areas, so that goes to figure, a little bit off on that one. But, again, there's our latest radar. We don't have any new... Oh, yeah, there's a new recon fix that's been added on. Let me pan this out so you can see. There is our zoomed-in version of the Hurricane Hunters positions, and there you can see that's right at the southern tip of Cozumel, Mexico. Of course, this was quite a few hours ago, actually. This is not the latest actual vortex message from recent. I mean, this is a few hours back, but right now it looks to me like the basic position is right over the south tip of Cozumel and heading in towards the mainland is about where the center is right now. But this is west-northwest, folks. There's no waiver in this course. It's heading due west-northwest, and they are going to be getting the full brunt of this hurricane tonight in these areas, unfortunately. They're not going to get spared. Hi, Jim. I have been to Playa del Carmen 6 times with my husband. Cancun will be fine, but Playa del Carmen is in a lot of trouble, as well as Cozumel. Many hotels are right on the beach, no higher than 2 stories. Fifth Avenue is 1 block from the beach. The native Mexican people are very poor, have no windows or roofs, or on their very poorly built huts. It will feel like a tidal wave hit them if they stayed. And that's from Catherine in Cape Coral, Florida. Thank you very much, Catherine. Here's an email from Fernando. Hi, Jim. I'm in Mexico City and can't dial your numbers from here, but I can do the email. I'm a ham radio operator and have contact with many other hams in the area and other parts of Mexico. If we can help in any way with communications to the affected area, let me know. Thank you very much, Fernando. Absolutely. Email me at jim@hurricanecity.com. And if anybody else has any information from the Yucatan Peninsula tonight as the core of this hurricane's coming in, drop me an email, jim@hurricanecity.com, and we will make sure to get your information out over the air if we have any information to pass along. By the way, that image you're looking at there is the Hurricane Hunter aircraft vortex messages, and that's on the HurTrack program. That link can be found below the hurricane tracking chart at Hurricane City. It's called HurTrack Pro, and it gives you the live Hurricane Hunter reports from the aircraft, and also gives you the close-up views of the track of the hurricane. For example, there is our... Whoops, I just lost that image. What did I do with that? Okay, here we go. There is our wind field of our hurricane. Let me pan this image out There is our panned image of I believe I can't get that working right now, but actually this program has everything with it. It has storm surge maps and everything else, but tonight we're not going to be able to show you storm surge maps because they don't have storm surge maps for this particular location in the program. Here's another email. Hi, Jim. I'm from Cancun, but now I live in Los Angeles. However, I still have family members over there, and it's nice to be able to get all of this info from you. Thanks a lot. I just talked to my cousin, and he told me that things are starting to get real ugly. Well, thanks again, and I'll keep listening. Thank you from Los Angeles tonight, listening in. Okay, let's see. Robert's the recon report here. Still 140 knot flight level winds. Pretty amazing stuff. Apparently, we still have a bona fide Category 4 moving into this area because the hurricane hunters are still finding high winds out there. Toronto, Canada. Orlando, Florida. Plano, Texas, listening in. Miami, listening in tonight. Cancun. Anthem, Arizona, listening in. Inverness, Florida. Conroe, Texas. Torrance, California, listening in. We have Summerton, Alabama. Cozumel. If there's somebody listening in Cozumel, I'd love for them to drop me an email, jim@hurricanecity.com. Any information from the affected areas tonight. If you're on a laptop with a cell phone and you're sending out your last message, send it here because I can probably reach more people this way than any other way. So if you're if you're on a nobody's listening here tonight on a laptop on a battery because they got to conserve their battery. I'm sure they're not watching this presentation, but you can watch it on dial-up. So that's the good thing about this. But if anybody knows anybody from down there, have them drop me an email, jim@hurricanecity.com. Los Angeles listening in tonight. Another Cozumel. New Orleans listening in. We have Toronto again. Mexico listening in. New Smyrna Beach tonight. Houston, Texas listening in. Another one in Miami. Cozumel again. Baton Rouge, Louisiana. San Marcos, Texas listening in. Weston, Florida. Cape Coral. Tulsa, Oklahoma, Jacksonville, Florida listening in. We have Boston, Massachusetts, Cancun, Mexico. Another one from Cancun. Virginia listening in. Melbourne, Florida. We have another Cancun here. Middletown, Ohio. Edinburgh, Texas. Okay, that's the latest from those. Any emails Okay. Anybody, please don't send me pictures, though, because I can't, the emails that come in on that computer, I cannot transfer them over to the broadcast. So if you have a picture that you want to send me, especially if it's on the Internet, just give me the link to it, and then we'll put it up on the other screen, and we'll bring it up for people to see if it's something important, relevant to the storm making landfall tonight. If it's a picture, send us the link. Do not send us the picture as an attachment because it will not be able to be shown on the broadcast.
We're seeing a Category 4 hurricane come across one of the most beautiful places on Earth. And I don't know if you noticed my voice or not, but I've changed. I mean, it's a horrible thing that's happening right now, Jim.
I wish you had some kind of phone communication with the people down there. All right, I don't think you can hear me. All right, folks, it's currently 1:15 Eastern Time, and you're listening to the Hurricane Warning Show. I'm Jim Williams. If you're just tuning in tonight, we have a pretty good audience for 2 o'clock in the morning. 1:15 in the morning, we have about 200 listeners on the live video here. So we have a pretty good audience tonight. Let's turn the volume up on the ham radio one more time, see if we can hear anything coming over the airwaves. And I know it's tough if you're listening out there tonight. We're just not getting much. The propagation is horrible on the Hurricane Watch Net. The people that are being affected have lost their communication, so we have nothing to pass along. We're waiting the 2 a.m. advisory here, and as soon as we get that, we'll pass it along to you, and we'll have a lot better idea of what the hurricane itself is doing and where it's located. And so there's really nothing on the Hurricane Watch Net. All you hear is static, folks. That's it. There's no audio whatsoever coming in over the Hurricane Watch Net. We have no radio from Mexico because the what do we have here? Oh, okay, this is something else. Itself, Cozumel is 28 miles long and it's 11 miles wide at the widest point. And there is a road that passes right through the center of the island like this. You'll see my pointer here. There's a road that runs from the east to the west side of the island towards the city of San Miguel, where there's all the population lives on the west side of that island. And the maximum elevation of this island is 45 feet above sea level. There is an average of around 15-foot sea level in most of the island, but the 45-foot is on the west side of Cozumel, and that's where most of the people are. So the storm surge should not be a problem in Cozumel, but in Playa del Carmen, I think it's going to be a different story. The north part of Cozumel there, where you see the word Cozumel on your screen, that is where the wealthy people live on the island. There's Acamel is located, right where my pointer is, and they are also going to be under the full brunt of this hurricane tonight, and they are an area that has high cliffs on the beaches. So this area down here where my pointer is real high cliffs with low beaches in between. And let me zoom in on this even further so you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about here. See, if we really zoom in there, you can see there's a road that runs right along the coastline, and there's cliffs in and around some of these areas here along the beaches. There are some beaches, but they're mostly cliffs in here, and you notice these little concaves in here. I guess those are little beach areas. But again, not very many buildings. It's mostly just wooded forest and bush areas, swamps. A couple of buildings here and there, but basically very low population to the south. But again, when you get up into the north, right around Cozumel, Mexico, it's a different story. We have 60,000 in this area, and I believe we have about several thousand in the Playa del Carmen area. So they're another high area of high population that's going to be affected tonight. Pan this out so you can get an overview of what's happening here. And here is our... Why is my zoomer thing... okay, here we go. Okay, that's the scene tonight. That's ground zero, folks. That's where it's all going down. No new vortex messages. Again, that's our current position as of the 11 a.m. advisory. And we are awaiting the 2 a.m. advisory here that should be out in about 10-15.
Cozumel right now, and reporting a closed eye about 15 miles in diameter. You can see on the satellite picture it is getting very close. The hurricane force winds onshore now, so it's going to be a very rough overnight here across the northeastern part of the Yucatan Peninsula. And then we think after that we're going to be seeing the system cross over the peninsula and then head out into the Gulf of Mexico. And on the track that's the current forecast track, we could see it affecting the northeastern coast of Mexico and perhaps as far north as South Texas as we press on into the first part of next week.
And meteorologist Mike Bettis has been tracking Hurricane Emily from Cancun, where this weekend many tourists did actually evacuate.
Yeah, Cancun is known for its sandy white beaches, so erosion from Hurricane Emily will be a big concern for the resort city.
And Mike has more now on how Cancun and the Mexican resort cities, how they have prepared for Hurricane Emily.
Hurricane Emily, a record-setting hurricane, the strongest Atlantic Basin hurricane to ever form in the month of July, now wreaking havoc on the Mexican coast and making landfall. This storm, it really has been a long time in coming. Last time we had a major landfalling hurricane a decade ago here in the Yucatan, but how about the history of our storms here in the Yucatan and our impacts within 75 miles of Cancun? Let's talk about them. certainly last year, 2004, a record-setting year. Even just a glancing blow to this area. It was a Category 5 when it came racing by the Yucatan, some minor damage, but nothing like what happened in the panhandle of Florida. And then Roxanne, 1995, that was the last direct impact from a storm and a hit. That was a Category 3 storm with 115-mile-per-hour winds, but the big storm was 1988. And Hurricane Gilbert, a Category 5 storm, the strongest Atlantic Basin hurricane on record, with a pressure of 888 millibars. In 1967 and 1951, with Hurricanes Beulah and Charlie. Charlie came ashore as a Category 3. A lot of evacuations in the Cancun area. 30,000 people have been evacuated, all safely in shelters. Emergency managers working quite efficiently to get those tourists to safety as Emily rolls on shore. We'll assess the damage in the morning and have more live reports at that time. Reporting from Cancun, Mexico, I'm meteorologist Mike Bettis.
And Mike will be joining us here at about 6 a.m. in the morning. And as we take a look at the situation across the Atlantic and into the Caribbean, here's a history of Emily. It became a hurricane as it smashed into Grenada here in the Windward Islands, and then rapidly strengthened as it moved out into the eastern Caribbean Sea. At one point, it was the strongest hurricane on record in the Atlantic Basin in the month of July, top winds of 155 miles an hour. But now it is making landfall as a Category 4 hurricane here along the Yucatan Peninsula.
Yes, we live in Irvine, California. We appreciate all your information. We just returned from Akumal. I was just mentioning that. After purchasing a beautiful home, Casa Zama. Great timing. Yeah, I bet. That was from Ronald Stern, the Dean, School of Physical Sciences and Professor of Mathematics. Wow. Just purchased a home after... did you purchase the home in Akumal? Or did you purchase the home after you got back? But Akumal is just south of, actually I can draw it here on the map. Let me make sure that you all are looking at what I'm looking at. Okay, here's where he was coming from. And I believe Akumal is down in this area right here. And of course, this is now over here, the eye. So all this red area is probably over here. So this is where the hurricane force winds are probably right now, if I had to take a stab at it based on, because we have no radars now. Let me see if we do have the latest radar. This is from Cuba. I believe the other radar has gone out from Cancun. We haven't had any new images come in here, so obviously that radar is kaput. And let's see if we have any more images coming in here of radar. No, that's the same old image from Cuba. Yeah, I'm
up there.
Yeah, it is really.
Looks like it's getting its act together, or that last
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at a close-up satellite. I don't know if you can see it on your screen now, but that's up close and personal, and that eye is right over, or going to go right over Cozumel.
It is, but it doesn't look like it's quite. I mean, part of it's touching there, but the other part of it is good 30 miles west or east of there, I believe. Because it looks like the eye is probably about 30 miles around now, instead of only 10 or 15 like it had been.
Right. You know, what you might be looking at here on this image I have up on the screen. In fact, I'm going to circle it here so people can see. I think based on what the Hurricane Center advisory, the center is back in here where that black dot is, and this is just an opening here. There could be maybe a eye wall formation, maybe a concentric eye wall there or something going on. Maybe, I don't know what that is, but the eye is over here where that black dot is on the screen, so I'm not sure what that gap is.
I think it's rejuvenating itself in a different placement, which by what I'm looking at would be in a trajectory to clip the southern end head on of Cozumel. That's what I see. The tracking chart that you're showing is what the Hurricane Center is saying, but I'm thinking that eye is regenerating itself slightly to the east. In other words, it's almost like backtracking a couple hours and redeveloping an eye before it makes landfall.
All right, I have the latest recon up on the screen now, and you're going to see the latest fix, and that's where the lowest pressure they found is that last white dot on the screen, and it is definitely southwest of Cozumel.
Okay. Well, that would show why this eye is forming here on the radar and the satellite imagery.
Yeah, it's getting better organized as it's hitting shore, but definitely it's south. It's going to end up being an official eye passing just south of Cozumel without passing over the island. I think that's what it's going to end up being.
Right. One last question before I get off here. In the trajectory that she looks like she's going on the west-northwest track, that doesn't look like it's too much land for it to go across because it narrows drastically up there by Cancun and Cozumel as opposed to what it is down the central Yucatan. So if it keeps at that angle and doesn't make a sharp west, it may hold its own pretty well even across the whole peninsula. Not the Category 4 status, but it may only drop to like high 2 on the other side, because that doesn't seem like that's any wider than Florida's peninsula is wider than that part of it.
Right. Well, I just draw a line through the vortex messages and created a path of what it would travel over land, and that's only about 100 miles of land it would have to travel over. So that's only about maybe 5-6 hours. So we're looking at probably 8 o'clock in the morning. This thing will be coming back out over the water again.
And have you looked at weather underground as far as the water temperature? Are they still 86, 87 degrees in that area?
Looking at there, folks, on the screen is a water temperature map, and in this area right down here where my mouse pointer is, I believe that's around 84-degree water temperatures down in here, and then when you get up into this area, it's 85 degrees, so it's right around 84, plenty of warmth down there. The water temperatures aren't even a factor right now. The question is, how much is it going to degrade over land, and we haven't seen it diminish before landfall, so it's still going to be major as it's moving across, and it might only get down to Category 2 maybe.
That's what I anticipate, a high 2 or a minimal 3 as it enters the Gulf of Mexico on the other side, due to the stretch of land being thinner. Now, if she would have come in a couple hundred miles further down the Yucatan, it's a lot more land to go across and less Gulf before she gets to the mainland of Mexico, which will create a lot weaker of a storm on the Mexican coastline than would where she's coming at. It's almost like she's clipping the far northeastern tip of it, which isn't as wide. And look what Dennis did when it went across the Cuban Peninsula, and that had mountains, and it only went down to, I think, 95, I believe, when it crossed to the other side, if I recall correctly, and that was 145